Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, thanks for joining us. This is JNN English News and I'm Fariba Wahid in Tehran. Muslim Iranians staged rallies Friday all across the country to cry out their anger over the recurrent sacrilege of the Holy Quran by the U.S. interrogators at Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. Similar rallies were held in India, Britain, Turkey, and Palestine. The U.S. allegation over Iran's harboring terrorism was among issues raised at Tehran's Friday prayers led by Ayatollah Mohammad Imami Kashani. In an address to thousands of worshippers converged on Tehran University campus, Ayatollah Kashani said Americans themselves are the main supporters of terrorism in the world and that the U.S. military behavior at Guantanamo detention facility is a blatant example of acts of terror. On desecration of the Holy Quran at the Guantanamo prison, Tehran's entering Friday prayer leader said the move has made the already hated White House officials even more detested in the eye of the world people. The International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, says it has received several reports of desecration of the Holy Quran at Guantanamo Bay. Red Cross spokesman Vincent Lusser has told Agence France Presse that prisoners had reported certain cases of desecration, which, as he said, had been brought to the attention of U.S. authorities. The Red Cross statement followed the formal retraction of a story by Newsweek magazine on the sacrilege of the Holy Quran. This comes as Human Rights Watch says U.S. interrogators repeatedly offend the religious beliefs of Muslim detainees as part of their interrogation strategy. Special Counsel for Human Rights Watch Reed Brody has also said Muslim prisoners are humiliated in detention centers around the world by U.S. interrogators, desecrating their beliefs and depriving them of their religious duties.
بدأت مجموعات من الشباب في مدينة الكوفة جنوب النجف الأشرف برسم الأعلام.
In Al-Kufa, south of the holy city of Al-Najaf, a group of young men painted American and Israeli flags on the streets and the entrances to towns, mosques and shrines. The desecration of these flags is in protest of the United States soldiers raiding places of worships. Fighting erupted between protesters and United States forces in the southern Iraqi city of Al-Nasiriyah, wounding 8 people. In Baghdad, 2 children were buried. They were killed when a car bomb exploded in front of a mosque. The residents of Al-Sayyida, south of Baghdad, gathered the body parts of 2 children and buried them. They were killed in an explosion. Other civilians, including children who were playing in front of a mosque, were also wounded in the attack. According to eyewitnesses, an identified man parked his car in front of the mosque and detonated it from afar. This is part of a series of attacks against places of worship, especially the ones that belong to Muslim Shiites.
What is this? I want to know. This isn't a checkpoint or a center for the army, the police, or even the Americans. They are targeting innocent civilians and they are all children and women.
In the northern city of Al-Mosul, the tales of death were a bit different. The victims were relatives and guests of Parliament member Sheikh Fawaz al-Jarba. During an attempt on his life, the United States forces intervened and, as usual, fired at guests by mistake.
We came under gunfire attack, and then the U.S. forces intervened. Most of the martyrs were killed by the U.S. forces.
وفي صورة متصلة أخرى من يوميات المشهد العراقي
To contribute to the daily scene in Iraq, a group of young men in Al-Kufa, south of the holy city of Najaf, painted American and Israeli flags on the streets and at the entrances of towns, mosques and shrines, desecrating the flags by stepping on them in protest of the United States soldiers raiding places of worship. The youth opposed the occupation's soldiers entering their places of worship.
قد هب الشباب من الجموع الخيرة وخصوصا من الخط الصدري على أن ترسم الأعلام.
A group of young men from the Sadr movement painted American and Israeli flags on the streets and at the entrances to towns, mosques, and shrines so people would step on them.
8 people were wounded during a demonstration in the city of Al-Nasiriyah. Muqtada al-Sadr called for a demonstration in protest of the United States, but fighting erupted between the protesters and the police force.
استعادت القوات الأوزبكستانية السيطرة على مدينة كاراسو الواقعة على الحدود مع كيرغستان.
The Uzbek forces regained control over the city of Karasu along the Kyrgyzstani borders. This comes after 1,000 civilians were killed, according to unofficial sources, during the latest violent operations. The United Nations Security General Kofi Annan condemned the violent operations in the Uzbek city of Adijan, calling on protesters and security forces to cooperate with the UN Refugee Agency in areas that were subject to violence.
على خلفية موجات الإدانة الدولية لعمليات القمع الوحشية التي ارتكبتها الشرطة الأوزبكية ضد المتظاهرين من المعارضة.
In the wake of the international condemnation to the brutal oppressive measures that were committed by the Uzbek police forces against the opposition protesters, the Uzbek forces regained control over the city, Karasu, along the Kyrgyzstani borders and arrested local leaders. The Tashkent government tried to contain the social rebellion following the violent oppressive campaign last week. Uzbek border patrol units were seen outside the city's main crossing point along the Uzbek and Kyrgyzstani border for the first time since last Sunday. At the time, angry protesters set fire to governmental buildings and forced government forces outside of the city of Karasu. Uzbek nationals who are now in Kyrgyzstan said that the returning government forces arrested Bekhityar Rahamov, who is believed to be the leader of the rebels in the Uzbek side of the city. A German news agency claimed that it is still not clear if Rahamov has led the demonstration in the Uzbek side of Karasu city in the wake of the oppressive measures carried out by the government forces in Andijan, eastern Uzbekistan last Friday. Uzbek opposition activists say that 745 people were killed when soldiers randomly opened fire on crowds of protesters. However, the Uzbek president Islam Karimov said that the number of those who were killed did not exceed 196 people and described what happened as clashes with Muslim extremists who want to topple the regime and get rid of government officials. Britain, the European Union, and the United Nations called for conducting an international investigation into the violent events. British Foreign Minister Jack Straw called for conducting an independent international investigation to find out the reasons behind the killings and who is responsible. The United States made a similar call, but stopped short of demanding an independent international investigation to uncover the truth about what happened in Andijan. Still, this is probably the harshest criticism in years that Washington has made against Karimov, because he is considered to be one of Washington's major allies in the region of what it calls the war on terrorism. The United States has softened its criticism of the Uzbek president Karimov since he agreed to host an American military base in his country following the September 11 attacks of 2001.
على صعيد آخر أعلنت إسرائيل اليوم أنها ستستهدف المسلحين الفلسطينيين.
Israel announced that it will target Palestinian armed individuals who are launching missiles at Jewish settlements in the Gaza Strip at a time when the shaky ceasefire agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians is being seriously threatened. The Israeli Prime Minister made this decision after he met with senior security officials. Hamas responded by confirming that it's still committed to the cooling off period, despite the spread of violence in Gaza during the past 2 days. This funeral procession is for 2 more Hamas activists who were martyred during Israeli airstrikes, bringing back the tension that existed in Gaza before the declared ceasefire agreement between the Palestinian factions and the Israeli forces 3 months ago in Cairo. The funeral procession coincided with the escalated situation between the two sides, seriously threatening the cooling-off period, especially after some Palestinian activists launched 3 missiles at Israeli cities southeast of the Gaza Strip. 7 mortar shells were also launched on Israeli settlements in the Strip. These attacks did not cause human losses, but the Israeli Prime Minister still met with his security advisors to discuss ways to retaliate against Palestinian attacks, which were motivated by the killing of one Hamas activist. Hamas responded quickly by shelling Gush Katif settlement. In response, an Israeli plane opened fire toward a group of Palestinians, claiming that they were about to launch homemade missiles towards the settlement.
Hamas is holding a gun against the head of the Palestinian Authority, and every time something it does not like happens, of course, they open fire. This is not the way to run a country and the authority. There is no one gun and one authority.
While the Palestinian police tried to stop the shelling and clashed with Palestinian activists, the Palestinian Ministry of Interior declared that what is happening is a dangerous escalation and is unacceptable. The Palestinian Prime Minister expressed his concern over what he described as a clear violation to signed agreements, calling for limiting and reducing the Israeli policy of escalation. The National Resistance Brigades, the military wing of the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, announced that it is equipping all factions' military wings in order to launch a coordinated retaliation. This comes as Israel announced that it will target armed Palestinian individuals who launch missiles towards settlements. The Israeli defense minister ordered the army to take several measures against the armed group, but did not disclose the nature of these measures. This escalation compelled the head of the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Security Committee to call on Sharon to invade Gaza, the same way the West Bank was re-invaded.
The Zionist enemy continues killing and butchering the Palestinian people. So far, they have killed 30 Palestinians and hundreds were arrested. Israel continues the policy of incursions and assassinations. Thus, we confirm that Mufaza's statements do not scare the Hamas movement. We will continue to defend the Palestinian people.
These statements reflect the weakness of the ceasefire agreement, and the Israeli statements reflect Tel Aviv's desperate desire to pressure the Palestinian Authority to crack down on Hamas. These developments come as Israeli right-wing opposition groups are protesting Sharon's plan to withdraw from Gaza. This brings the security situation in the Palestinian territories back to the way it was 3 months ago.
It seems that oil is impacting decisions in Mauritania, even before it is being exported. The Mauritanian government decided to change the official weekend from Friday to Sunday, in compliance with requests from oil companies to coincide with the weekend of other oil companies and have the work week correspond with the majority of the work. Unusual movement. On an unusual day, thousands of people flocked to the center of the capital Nouakchott to go to work. Finding a method of transportation is what concerns everyone as the new workday starts. On this day, they are used to staying at home to relax away from the stress of work.
Friday is a holiday. We should not change it. Friday is my day off, but the offices are closed on Sunday.
The Mauritanian government attributed this decision to economic reasons. They wanted to coordinate their agenda for oil exports with international hours of operation.
Due to the huge losses caused by the status quo, which according to the economic studies of 2004 estimated approximately half of the net local oil production, which is equivalent to 17.9 billion ugiya.
For decades, Friday has been the weekend in Mauritania. This decision shocked citizens. Generation after generation has been taking this day off. It is a day of worship as people go to Friday prayers, a special ritual in this Muslim country.
As a student, my third class is during the Imam's Friday sermon. I oppose this decision and the people are not accustomed to it. Scheduling a class on this day interferes with the prayers, which are the most important thing.
Public and private sector's reaction to this decision varied. The student body is the most outspoken in terms of keeping Friday as the weekend.
We were not expecting this and we're really surprised. It's a blessed day for Muslims. It's a day for visits and connecting with people.
It seems that the influence of oil in Mauritania is very strong. This long-awaited dream is starting to meddle with the personal affairs of the Mauritanian citizens, changing their way of life. In the coming days, it may control the fate of nations. Reporting from a Madar program, Muhammad Fadili, Abu Dhabi Television, Nouakchott.
A picture of former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein in his underpants was splashed across the front page of Britain's biggest-selling newspaper. The Sun newspaper quoted U.S. military sources as saying they had handed over the pictures in the hope of dealing a body blow to the resistance in Iraq. Other pictures showed Saddam with short, dyed black hair and a mustache, washing clothes by hand and asleep on his bed. The newspaper said the pictures were taken at a top-secret location where Saddam was being held in a relatively small cell, watched 24 hours a day by special forces and military police. A U.S. military statement said the pictures, which are probably a year old, contravene Saddam's rights as a prisoner and could have broken the Geneva Convention. It said investigation to determine who took the photos are underway to ensure such an incident would not occur again. Tensions grew in the Gaza Strip as Israelis and Palestinians engage in a tit-for-tat retaliatory attacks. Israeli forces killed a Palestinian gunman who they claimed opened fire on the Jewish settlement of Kfar Darom in the southern Gaza Strip. The Israeli army said 3 Palestinian gunmen took over a house near the settlement and opened fire with guns and anti-tank weapons at houses from outside the settlement. The Israeli army said 1 gunman was killed and another injured, while the 3rd man was believed to have escaped. Hamas group, in cooperation with Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades of Fatah and the Popular Resistance Committees, jointly claimed responsibility of the attack on the Jewish settlement of Kfar Darom. Meanwhile, in Israel, Palestinian armed groups continued to fire rockets and mortar bombs into Israel, damaging a home in the Israeli city of Sderot yesterday evening. Clashes also erupted when Israeli settlers jostled the soldiers as they battled to open a gate to a United Nations compound, which the Israeli soldiers were trying to keep secure. Today's violence came a day after Israel's defense chief ordered the army to use all necessary means to stop Palestinian fighters firing mortars and rockets at Israeli targets. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said he had no plans to postpone parliamentary elections set for June 17. Speaking to reporters at the end of his visit to India, Abbas said he hoped all parties would stick to a 3-month truce with Israel despite a spike in violence. The Palestinian premier also said he believed Israel would eventually withdraw from the Gaza Strip, but refused to say whether the pullout would take place in August as planned. At least 4 American soldiers had been killed in insurgent attacks in Iraq. In Taiji, north of Baghdad, a U.S. soldier was killed when his vehicle crashed following a roadside bomb blast. 2 other soldiers were also killed overnight when insurgents in a car opened fire on them in central Baghdad. In the mostly Shiite Baghdad's neighborhood of Kadhmiya, 2 Iraqi policemen were killed and 3 injured in a roadside attack on a patrol. Iraqi soldiers backed by U.S. troops and helicopters surrounded building in the Sunni area of Adamiya in the capital after insurgents fired at Iraqi National Guards. U.S. troops exchanged fire with insurgents as U.S. and Iraqi troops sealed the area and prevented movement in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Baghdad's main Sunni Muslim mosques closed for 3 days to protest against what clerics said were killings of preachers by a Shiite militia, stoking fears sectarian strife could slide towards the civil war. Also in Baghdad, 2 young boys were killed overnight when a car bomb exploded near their house. Police said at least 5 people were also wounded in the explosion, which targeted Al-Imam Al-Mahdi Shiite Mosque in the commercial street in the area. And the U.S. military said that guerrillas fired rockets at the U.S.-run Abu Ghraib prison, wounding 5 detainees, but no U.S. troops were injured. Iraq will send a delegation to Damascus soon to seek Syria's help in stopping what Baghdad says is infiltration by insurgents from the Syrian side border. The remarks were made by Iraqi Prime Minister Ibrahim Jafari in Ankara during talks with his Turkish counterpart Tayyip Erdogan. Talks between the two sides also focused on economic ties and security issues. Speaking at the joint press conference, Jafari said Iraq will never allow any group to harm a neighboring country in any way, for will it allow any groups in Iraq to damage other countries' politics, economy and security. Turkish Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan said Jafari had pledged to work jointly with Ankara to fight Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK rebels, holed up on Iraqi soils.
Hello and welcome. Saad Rafiq al-Hariri vowed to implement a comprehensive economic reform program that was devised by late Prime Minister Hariri, who could not execute it during his tenure due to political obstacles. Hariri, at a meeting with economic, financial and industrial figures alongside Mrs. Nazik Hariri in Puritum, stressed the slain Premier's program included financial and administrative steps that Saad will implement with the help of the new parliament and government. Saad also promised to press ahead with efforts to draft a modern electoral law in line with the Ta'if peace accord. Earlier, he called on voters in Beirut to cast their ballots for legislative elections, making it clear a low turnout could allow the candidates who opposed assassinated Premier Hariri to win seats in parliament.
At a meeting with a large delegation representing the Al Aransa tribes, who expressed support for Saad in building a free, sovereign, independent and peaceful state where all the Lebanese coexist, Hariri stressed voting on May 29th will amount to an expression of loyalty to the late leader and a message to all those who planned, funded, executed and killed the slain leader and his companions. Tribe members all vowed to turn up at the ballot boxes and cast their votes in favor of the 3 coalitions supported by Hariri. Hariri also told the delegations that the new MPs in parliament will pursue the murdered leader's legacy of national unity. He pointed out the assassinated premier was able to achieve some of his goals, but his objective of national unity was fulfilled by his martyrdom. Saad said the Lebanese who marched on March 14th demanding the truth behind the murder and national unity were made up of Christians and Muslims alike, adding if a group was not represented, efforts should be exerted to include them. Later, Saad Hariri said Lebanese youths, especially students, have a crucial role to play in building a modern state and preserving Lebanon's democratic system, as well as eradicating sectarianism, fighting corruption and supporting reform. Speaking at the graduation ceremony of the Elysee Hazmiya School's Rafiq Hariri class at BL, in the presence of MPs and candidates on his lists, Saad paid tribute to his late father. Addressing the graduation ceremony, which was held under his auspices, Saad recalled assassinated Prime Minister Hariri's speech at the same ceremony last year, in which he highlighted the role of education and cultural values. Saad said the late leader was not only a successful father, so were all Lebanese fathers, citing the March 14th unity rallies and the recent achievements of the country's youths. A moment of silence was observed at the beginning of the ceremony, followed by the school's headmaster's introduction of Hariri, Dr. Eli Musallam, who speaking to Saad said, quote, "Sheikh Saad, from now on we can refer to you as MP or even Prime Minister." At the end of the service, Hariri handed the graduates their certificates. 9 opposition candidates on the ticket of the son of the slain former premier have already won uncontested parliament seats in Beirut, giving the opposition a head start in crucial balloting later this month that is expected to end the pro-Syrian control of the legislature. The 10 seats still up for grabs in Beirut will be contested by 27 candidates, including 10 on Hariri's list. Elections beginning in Beirut on May 29th and in other regions the 3 Sundays after that will be the first balloting free of Syrian forces which completed their withdrawal last month.
General Aoun also criticized the opposition and warned that upcoming elections will return the same faces to parliament. He accused the U.S. of intervening to support the 2000 electoral law, a performance he dubbed as very bad. Aoun accused the political class of corruption, which he said he must uproot. Speaking to APTN, Aoun, who recently returned from Paris exile, accused the opposition of making political capital from late Premier Hariri's murder.
Everybody has to understand there is, unfair elections, unfair people. They are playing to control Lebanon. They have a tendency for hegemony, and that's too bad. Therefore, I say they may destabilize Lebanon once more. Syria is now out of Lebanon, and they are not here to oppress the people with their security services. Everybody feels free, and Syria is not here anymore. We need reforms, and now we are reaching the date of the elections, and no group of candidates has presented already its program. Therefore, everybody is disappointed. There is no more opposition. They are in power now, right? Most of the opposition, what we called opposition, is now in power. This opposition was not, an opposition between 15 years, and only it was in opposition for 3 months or 4 months, and now they took office, and they are leading, the government, which is going to to supervise the election.
The developments today, the cabinet voted to extend the temporary law limiting naturalization of Palestinians from the territories who are married to Israeli citizens. The decision came on the date that Palestinians call Nakba, or catastrophe, which they equate with the founding of the State of Israel. We get more in this report by Dennis Zinn.
At midday today, sirens wailed in the West Bank and Gaza as Palestinians marked what they call Nakba, or catastrophe. That is, the proclamation of the State of Israel 57 years ago, on the 15th of May 1948. In Ramallah, following fiery speeches in the central Manara Square, hundreds of marchers took to the streets to demonstrate against what they called the Israeli occupation of their land.
We are looking forward to see that the world would support the Palestinians to achieve their national rights and to have their independent state of the 1967 borders, and to solve the conflicts once and forever. This is what we are looking in this very catastrophic day for all the Palestinians, whether they are here in their homelands or they are in the diaspora, waiting for the just solution for their cause.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.